Hello everyone. What is going on? Summer is here. Just got back from Vegas a couple days ago. EYBL session 4, and that was my first time actually going to, an EYBL live period, I believe. And it was just amazing seeing current former players. Also was able to go to a couple NBA Summer League games, and that was cool too. But it was really just amazing to see the coaches from these major programs in attendance. It was really amazing. And one thing that I realized over the weekend, it's a lot of basketball. The girls were playing there too with the Las Vegas Convention Center. They were on the other side. They were in a whole different, part of the convention center. And, just being in the hotels and seeing the parents, and we're all waiting on rides, whether we, got an Uber or whatever, or rented a car, and just in and out, back and forth to games and stuff like that. And it's a lot, but it's also enjoyable, to see your athlete play, and especially when they play well and the teams are winning. But one thing that really hit me over the week was how basketball is basketball, or whatever sport your athlete plays, that as parents, we get so focused on the sport, the development of the sport, that we forget about the personal development. We forget that we still have to develop our athletes as people, as humans, because that's who they are first. No one's born an athlete. You may be born with the physical gifts, the natural talent, but you're not born that way. Everyone still has to learn the actual sport and master it. And so you see social media pages that talk about watching your posture when you're on the bench, being a good teammate, not having an attitude, all of these things that coaches look at, that could actually, if you are being looked at, scratches you off the list. Poor body language and things like that. But it's not just with that sport that we should be concerned with as parents, but just in real life, just in general, and who our athletes are as people. There has to be a level of expectation at home. There has to be a level of expectation in school, because their sport is not everything. And who you are as a person will definitely get you more opportunities in the long run than your actual sport. Everyone, regardless of whether, they play their sport, every athlete, that plays their sport professionally, there's life after their sport is much longer than the time they actually spend in their sport. And, you just think about the structure and the discipline at home, giving your athlete, they should have chores to do. There should be an expectation that they're keeping their room clean, their beds made, that they have to clean up after themselves. You're not their maid. And, having an expectation of their behavior and their discipline in the classroom, and just everything, even, going out to eat at restaurants, whether you're, out of town for a tournament or not, making sure that, they're sitting up straight at the table, they're using proper etiquette, when they're speaking with the server, that they're speaking loudly and clearly, they're giving eye contact. All of these things are about personal development that have nothing to do with the sport, but are just as important as the sport. And so, it just really reminded me just how important that is, but how it can be put on the back burner because everyone is just so focused on developing their craft. Everyone is so focused on getting on a team to where they could get the exposure, getting offers. Everyone is focused on those things, but who your athlete is as a person speaks volumes. And it's going to help them much longer in the long run if you develop your child to just be an overall good, well-rounded person. And we can't forget those things. And also too, checking in on their mental health. It's a lot. If you play year round, a lot of athletes, it's year round. It's always something. It's always a workout. It's a practice, it's games, it's travel, it's film study, it's weights, it's conditioning, it's all of these things. And we have to keep in mind that, while some of them are on track to, go to the next level, and that's what it requires. It requires this level of intensity, which is understood. But we can't forget that they are still kids, and they go through things too. They get tired too, even if it's something that they love and they want to pursue and they have a great amount of passion for. We have to be mindful to check in on them mentally and making sure that we're having conversations with them. We're allowing them to speak. We're allowing them to express themselves. We're allowing them time to rest and to just be okay with, okay, today is a rest day. If you just want to sit and be on your phone and scroll social media and laugh at TikToks or just play the game or just whatever, that, we have to be okay with that, that they're not robots and that they need a break too. That we have to understand that as parents, even though, we do want the best for them. We want the best and we want the most for them. But, like anyone else, just like us as adults, we get tired of the routine. They get tired of routines too, And so we just have to make sure that even though if they're elite or just whatever the case may be, or they're playing because they really enjoy to play, that we continue to see our kids as people, and not these robots, and just take the time out to try to give them as balanced of a life as possible. It's really hard when they're playing year round. The summers, budgets are for tournaments, out of town tournaments. You really don't have time to go on vacations. You really don't have the time or the money to do much extra. You go out of town for a tournament, there's no off days. Even if you just play, a game per day, it's still preparation, getting to the gym, playing the game. After that, they want to rest, get off their feet a little bit, get something to eat, and then you got to prepare for the next day. And this really doesn't give time for leisure or too much time or energy or money to do some fun things in a city that you may not have visited before or whatever. It's really difficult to do. And so we just have to be mindful in trying to give our kids other things to do, other things to look forward to, have fun, maybe go bowling or just whatever, so that it's not just all their sport. I think that is very, very important. So I just want to encourage all the parents of athletes to just be mindful that they are human, be mindful that they're still developing young people, and that personal development is just as important as skill development in their sport. it is just as important. And as parents, it's our responsibility. As the adults, it's our responsibility to be just as diligent in developing them as humans as it is in their sport. And that's what this weekend really, I've always known it, and I've always, tried to instill that in my sons. They are great people. They're very good people. They're mannerable. They have etiquette, but you just have to remember to just stay on them and teach them lessons, life lessons along the way. And be gentle, be loving, be kind, but be honest with them on all fronts. And everything will work out fine. So thanks for listening.